Tonight, I'm honored to host David C. Olcott, executive coach, martial arts artist, NLP master, and author of the Amazon best-selling book, Swords of Illumination. With over 35 years of global coaching experience, David blends ancient wisdom with modern strategy to help people remember who they truly are, reclaim their destiny, and align powerfully with purpose. This conversation is your call to awaken your inner warrior and live the life you were meant to lead. Welcome to the show, David. It's a pleasure to have you.
Anya, thanks so much for having me here. I've been looking forward to our conversation for sure.
Mhm. So, David, Swords of Illumination is such a powerful title. What inspired this book, and what does the sword represent in the context of personal growth?
So what inspired me was years ago, I was really floundering. I was actually involved in real estate at the time. I'd been in politics, and I was living a life, Anya, that most people would say was really fantastic. And I was working in South Beach, Florida, selling real estate to all the celebrities down there, and living in this multi-million-dollar home, driving beautiful cars, living in South Beach. Our office was a yacht, and I was absolutely miserable. And so the universe just gave me this big cosmic 2x4, if you will, and said, "Hey, you're on the wrong path. It's time to look for something different." So it awakened me to start looking much more of a spiritual path as opposed to my ego path. And along that way, I'd actually met a person in my life that said, the greatest life you can ever live is being in service of others. And that just, I don't know why it hit me that day, but years later, of course, I really didn't even understand its powerful meaning. And then I read a book called Samurai Selling. And that in that book, samurai, it describes being samurai loosely translated as being in service of others. So when I saw that, I was like, oh my gosh, one of my favorite, mythical, if you will, characters in life being samurai. That's fascinating. And I also study the martial arts with that. So it really came together into this one place in service of other success. Samurai Success, which is the name of our company, is how we came to that place. So that's its inspiration.
That's amazing. And was there a defining moment in your own life when you realized you needed to pick up your own sword again?
Yeah, yeah, all the time. So the swords, if you will, are a symbolism of understanding that when you think about samurai, people think about having the mastery of the sword. And that's very true. Yet today we don't walk around with swords. Yet there are still samurai on the planet, people in service of others. And in order to be able to do that, the sword really has become the mindset, skill set, tool set. So in the book that we published, it really starts talking about how to structure this understanding of how you actually create and manifest things in this lifetime. And the swords represent individual principles or elements, if you will, to be able to understand that structure so that you can change that, rewrite that, and change your experience of this physical plane.
That imagery is so strong. It reminds us that our oath truth is a tool and we are meant to wield it with clarity.
Yes, absolutely. And in matter of fact, wielding that thing is one thing. Making sure it's sharp is doing the training, right? Doing the work that's necessary to make sure that when you do have to use your swords, that you use them at the highest and best level.
Definitely. So, you talk about closing the gap between who we say we are and how we actually show up. Why is that disconnect so common and how can we begin bridging it?
So on this path of understand the spiritual things, we also have to understand the physical realm of things. And so this body is designed, as my understanding is, that we have this beautiful brain that we have. And that brain has two main focuses, your conscious part of your brain and your subconscious part of your brain. And the subconscious part of your brain is where you're actually manifesting 95% of everything that's happening in your world. So this conscious conversation that we're having right now doesn't change that manifestation. What truly changes or attracts things to our lives is the subconscious. So how do I get access to that subconscious part of my brain? So if I could change that, I can then change the events or experiences I'm having with those events in this physical realm. So really getting that connection was the very first step of understanding how this physical plane works and how the spiritual energy kind of collaborates with that. So really finding that is what we've been on search for the last 35 years. Finding those elements is what's in the book. And then our coaching really focuses on how to help people make that practical.
Absolutely. And what's one internal shift people can make to start living in deeper alignment with the stated values?
So my understanding is about this lifetime is that your values is kind of like a hierarchy of values, and your belief systems are more like a thermostat. So your value structure, if you say that, hey, you believe that you want to make a lot of money, but all of a sudden you have family more important than making money, like money is number five and family is number one, then the chances of you being a multi-billionaire is actually very low because you're prioritizing your value system, and your value system that's part of your subconscious programming is actually determining your decisions, your responses and reactions to different events that show up. So it's kind of like automatic. You're driving along in traffic, someone pulls in front of you, if you will, and your reaction response is a programmed response. Well, that programmed response is also what's happening to your life in making money, having relationships, losing weight, gaining weight, being successful in business, not being successful. All these are pre-programmed events. So if you want to change those things, you've got to be able to change that programming. Getting to the core of that is where we help our clients.
That message hits home. It's not about perfection, it's about powerful congruence.
Mm. I love that you're using that word. As a matter of fact, that's a big thing. If you think about this formula, that your identity that's either created by other people or created by yourself, this becomes your identity, no matter who's creating it for you. So if you have a version of yourself that you're a person, your identity is, hey, I'm a person that's a half glass full kind of person versus a half glass empty. Your experiences and perceptions going to be focused through that lens, and every event that happens in your life is going to be dictated, if you will, by that identity. So that identity really helps you identify how you're going to perceive the world and making that shift.
Absolutely. And your summarized success system integrates Newtonian and metaphysics principles. Can you share how those two worlds come together in your coaching method?
Yeah. So for the longest time when I was in corporate America, there was a very clear separation between spiritual energy and this physical realm. And as I went down this journey, I realized that they're not separate from each other. They're actually part of each other. They're symbolic. And then the people that are able to use that, the most successful people on our planet, are actually using metaphysical or spiritual concepts to make themselves successful. For example, if you know who you are and you can't be talked out of it, you're going to be very successful in this lifetime. Now, it may not be all the most powerful, wonderful experiences, but you're going to be very successful because the term that you used before was called congruency. And so, this formula that came through was your identity over time creates consistency. Consistency over time creates congruency. Congruency over time creates this frequency of coherence. And coherence is this frequency of things that attract things to you. So that's the metaphysical spot. The physical aspect is when they collide. And so your identity over time creates this frequency vibration that starts attracting things to you, also known as the attractor factor. So that's where this metaphysical and this physical actually come together. They've always been there, but now it's about making that practical.
100%. And how do you help clients balance the logic of structure with the surrender of spirit?
So interestingly enough, it's easy for most people to see that there's structure that's necessary when you're building a business. But most people can't see very clearly is the structure that it takes to be able to actually build a life. And they both have structure. And so we help people see that structure and actually put that into structure. For example, in business, people use a cliche here in America that says, you've got to be on the same page. Well, we literally do that with our clients. We actually write out all the great processes they have in their heads, and we write them out into a physical map so that everyone can actually see that they're actually doing the same work. So part of the work that we do with our clients is being able to help people go from self-employed to true business owners. And the way to do that is by creating the structure so that when you hand that structure of a task and project to someone, they're actually doing the work at the same quality level as if you were doing it without you doing the work. So it allows you to be duplicatable, if you will, without cloning you.
I love that. You're showing it's not either or. It's the integration that leads to the real transformation.
Ah, beautifully said, Anya. So much of the work in the spiritual field, I feel that we've kind of gotten off track with these things because we think it's, we got to work with our ego or we've got to work with our soul. What if we could integrate those? Because I really believe that's why we're here. In the other dimension, we get to work with our soul all the time. But here we get to have a chance to truly work with both those things, that integration you're talking about. And I will tell you, when you look at successful people on this planet, they have found the way to integrate mind, body, soul, and ego into this physical plane, which makes them so successful.
Absolutely. And many of your clients rediscover a sense of destiny through your work. What's one belief or behavior you see that commonly blocks people from accessing that feeling?
So, one of the most interesting belief systems we've seen on the planet, which is in order for me to feel good about me, I have to bring you down. Like I have to make fun of you, or I have to embarrass you, or I have to humiliate you. I have to do something to you to bring you down so I can feel better about me. Now, when you say that out loud, it sounds so crazy. Like no one's doing that, David. I will tell you, it has been my experience that so many of us are doing that. And the reason we're doing that is because we watch television, we watch all these different shows of people, making fun of other people, and we think that's the way to do it. Well, the idea here is that the reason that doesn't work is because you can't give something away you don't possess. So if you're embarrassing and humiliating and making fun and shaming other people, it's because you own that stuff. And as long as you own those things, they're going to keep you from the level of success you've always dreamt about. So releasing some of that, healing some of that, doing the work so that you don't have to do that. And it creates a very different set of behaviors that are pretty obvious to someone who's on the path of mastery that just says, hurting other people goes against some of the masters who said, love thy enemy. And the reason for that is so important is because not making fun of them, without that person being the opposite of you, you couldn't experience yourself as who you say you are. Without up, there's no down. Without left, there's no right. So this law of contrast, the law of polarity, is one of the physical realms and laws, if you will, that's so important that we've forgotten how to use it properly to really create the experiences we're after. But the true masters on this planet understand that polarity and then use it to their advantage.
Definitely. And can you share a story where a client broke through and truly reconnected with their purpose?
Yeah, I can tell you that even for myself, one of the things I really disliked doing in my past, and I find a lot of my clients have very similar behaviors, but one of the really big ones was for me was I didn't like to read. And when I was growing up in my 20s and stuff, you couldn't get me to read anything to save my life. Today, I mean, I really read almost 100 books every single year. That's because I've changed my belief system about reading and the knowledge that it gives me. So by changing my programming, I've learned to love something that I really dislike. And that's what we really teach our clients is there's so many behaviors that you're going to have to be willing to do in your business to be able to make it be successful. If you're in real estate, for example, and you do not follow up with clients, you don't use a calendar, you don't read, those behaviors are likely going to keep you from a level of success that you dreamt of. But turning those same behaviors that you didn't like into things you absolutely love absolutely accelerates your ability to get to that destiny that you've always dreamt about, being successful in your field.
That's such a beautiful reminder that it's never too late to remember who we are.
Absolutely. So much of that is remembering who we are is such an important part, even though there's been some very well-meaning people in my life, and I'm sure and people listening to the podcast that people have really told you who you are. It's time to take that identity back. It's time to take that power back and really start creating a self-created identity as opposed to what everybody else has told you your life. And then moving into a brand new experience because of that.
Definitely. And for listeners who feel stuck in a version of life that doesn't reflect their truth, what's one powerful step they can take today to reclaim their destiny?
So, your destiny, from my understanding, is that we're actually attracting our destiny to us, and that destiny is attracted to your identity. So, who you say you are is actually attracting your destiny to you. So, if you are saying that you're a world class athlete and you're sitting on the couch and eating potato chips, those two things don't go with each other. So, there's a very important spiritual memory to remind ourselves that this be, do, have strategy. If I'm being a professional athlete, then eating healthy and eating clean and training really well is part of being a professional athlete. That's what's going to give me the experience, the havingness, if you will. But if I'm a professional athlete and I'm eating potato chips, I'm going to have a very different experience. So those things are so tied together. You're not going to get away from them. So use them instead of it using you.
Mm-hmm. And how can they stay on the path when the world pulls them back into old patterns?
So this is exactly what your programming does. It keeps us from going into these places. So for example, we talked about this belief systems and value systems, the hierarchy of your value systems, but the thermostat when it comes to your belief systems. Let's imagine that you have a thermostat in your wall that controls the heating and the cooling system within your home. And then you set that thermostat at 70 degrees. As soon as that thermostat, all of a sudden the room gets too hot, it gets up to 80, all of a sudden the thermostat kicks on and cools things down because it's too hot, right? And then all of a sudden it goes over here to 60 and it says, hey, that's too cold. We need to heat things up. And so you start seeing a pattern within yourself of you heating and cooling and heating and cooling. Like I'm on my path, I'm doing really well. And all of a sudden I self sabotage myself. Well, what's happening there is you're actually working perfectly. Your program is designed to be able to keep you at 70. So let's just take that 70 degrees and make it $70,000 a year, which is pretty good money. Yet all of a sudden, if I start making $80,000 a year, I'm going to cool things down. I'm going to sabotage myself. And if I'm only making $60,000 a year, I'm going to heat things up because I got to get back to 70. My thermostat is set at 70. My programming is set at 70. Until I change that programming, Anya, I'm going to continue to heat up and cool off and heat up and cool off. So if you see that pattern, this is the practicalness that you want to be able to change. And that's the shift that must take place for you to get to that next level of success.
That's such an empowering call to action. Like, we don't have to wait for life to hand us purpose. We choose to live it now.
Beautifully said. As a matter of fact, your purpose is designed by you. It's your identity and your mission and your purpose. Very much talked about in the book. These are things that you actually get to create. Now, I know that hasn't been maybe some of our training in the past, but that doesn't take it away that, or the gifts that we've been given from the universe is that we have the ability to create our own self-identity and create our own purpose while we're here, no matter what everybody else is saying. So that is such a powerful tool to remember and a call to action for sure that says, if you really want to take control of your destiny, take control of your identity and your purpose is the very first step.
Absolutely. And David, thank you for sharing your wisdom, your fire, and your path of purpose. And to all our listeners, Swords of Illumination isn't just a book, it's a blueprint for reclaiming your light. The life you were meant to live is waiting. Pick up your sword and step forward.